Ralph was a CEO who decided to get closer to his employees to understand the company's day-to-day challenges. But when he meets Lily, one of the most prominent attendants, he discovers that she faces huge problems and dilemmas that can change the future of his company and would leave anyone stunned. The fluorescent lights of the Future Tech Solutions office buzzed softly, casting a sterile glow over rows of cubicles. Ralph adjusted the collar of his ill-fitting shirt for what felt like the 100th time that morning. He wasn't used to this, the hum of mundane office life. For years, he had sat in his corner office on the top floor, far removed from the daily grind of his employees. But today, he wasn't Ralph Wellington, the CEO. He was Ryan Malloy, a new hire in the marketing department. The idea had come to him during a late-night board meeting. The numbers were good, but something felt off. Employee satisfaction surveys had shown a steady decline, and turnover rates were creeping up. Ralph had always prided himself on being a visionary leader, but he couldn't shake the feeling that he was missing something crucial. So he decided to see things from the ground up. Disguised as Ryan, he spent the last week learning the ropes, attending orientation sessions, and trying to blend in with the crowd. It was an experiment born out of necessity, one that required humility and a lot of caffeine. His first day as Ryan had been a humbling experience. He had fumbled with the printer, spilled coffee on his desk, and accidentally sent an email to the wrong recipient. The other employees had been polite but distant, their conversations filled with inside jokes and references he didn't understand. It was a stark contrast to what he was used to as CEO. The realization hit him hard. He was invisible here, just another face in the crowd. As the days passed, Ralph began to notice the little things. The way employees sighed heavily before answering emails, the hushed complaints about unrealistic deadlines, the exhaustion etched into their faces by mid-afternoon. These weren't just statistics on a report. They were real people struggling under unseen burdens. And then there was Lily Carlton. Lily was in her mid-20s, with sharp features and a determined air about her. She had joined Future Tech a few months ago and quickly made a name for herself as a hard worker. Ralph had seen her name in reports. Her projects were always delivered on time, if not early, and her ideas were innovative. But in person, she was an enigma. She rarely joined her colleagues for lunch, opting instead to eat at her desk while typing furiously. When someone tried to strike up a conversation, she would smile politely but keep her answers short, deflecting any attempts to get to know her. Ralph found himself drawn to her mystery. During a team meeting, he noticed the dark circles under her eyes, the way her hands trembled slightly as she presented her latest project. She was hiding something, he was sure of it. One afternoon, as he was grabbing a coffee from the break room, he overheard a snippet of conversation between Lily and Kirsten, a friendly colleague who seemed to be one of the few people Lily trusted. "You look exhausted, Lily," Kirsten said, her voice tinged with concern. "Are you sure you're okay?" Lily forced a smile. "I'm fine, just a bit tired. Alice kept me up last night." "Alice?" Kirsten asked, raising an eyebrow. Lily's face flushed, and she quickly changed the subject. Ralph's curiosity deepened. Who was Alice? A friend? A sister? He made a mental note to keep an eye on Lily, sensing that her story was far more complicated than it seemed. Back in the office, Ralph continued to observe Lily. He noticed how she always left the office exactly at 5 p.m., rushing out the door with a sense of urgency. He saw the way she hesitated before swiping her access card, as if calculating every second. And then there were the whispered phone calls she took in the stairwell, her voice strained with worry. By the end of the week, Ralph was determined to uncover the truth. He had started this undercover mission to understand his employees, but now it felt personal. Lily wasn't just another employee. She was a puzzle he needed to solve. And as he sat at his desk, pretending to review a marketing report, he couldn't shake the feeling that her secret would change everything. That evening, as the clock ticked toward the end of the day, Ralph made a silent promise to himself. He would find out what Lily was hiding, not as the CEO, but as Ryan, the new guy who just wanted to understand. Little did he know, the truth would shake him to his core. The parking lot of Future Tech Solutions was eerily quiet after hours. the only sounds being the distant hum of traffic and the occasional flicker of a dying streetlight. Ralph lingered near his car, pretending to fumble with his keys as he watched Lily from a distance. She had left the office in a hurry again, her shoulders tense and her steps quick. He had followed her out, his curiosity outweighing his guilt about invading her privacy. Lily walked briskly to an older sedan parked in the far corner of the lot. Ralph squinted, trying to make out what she was doing. She opened the back door and leaned inside, her movements careful and deliberate. After a moment, she straightened up, holding a small blanket. Ralph's breath caught in his throat as he saw a tiny hand reach out from the car, followed by the soft coo of a baby. That was Alice. Ralph's mind raced as he pieced together the fragments of what he had seen. Lily wasn't just a dedicated employee. She was a mother, struggling to balance work and childcare. And from the looks of it, she was doing it alone. His heart ached as he watched her gently rock the baby, her face illuminated by the dim glow of the car's interior light. She looked exhausted, her earlier determination replaced by a quiet desperation. He wanted to step forward to offer help, but he hesitated. He was still Ryan, the new guy, and he couldn't reveal his true identity without jeopardizing his mission. Instead, he made a mental note to discreetly assign a security guard to keep an eye on Lily and ensure her safety. It was the least he could do. The next day at the office, Ralph found himself watching Lily even more closely. He noticed how she barely touched her lunch, how she jumped at every phone notification, how she seemed to be carrying the weight of the world on her shoulders. During a team meeting, Kirsten leaned over and whispered something to Lily, who nodded but avoided eye contact. Ralph couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to the story. Later that afternoon, as he was heading to the break room, he overheard Kirsten talking to another colleague. "I don't know how she does it," Kirsten said, her voice low. "She's been living in her car for weeks. Can you imagine? With a baby?" Ralph froze, his hand tightening around his coffee mug. Living in her car? His mind flashed back to the previous night, to the sight of Lily and Alice in the parking lot. He had assumed it was a one-time thing, a desperate measure after her mother fell ill. But this was something else entirely. He felt a surge of anger, not at Lily, but at himself. How had he, as CEO, let things get to this point? How many other employees were struggling in silence, too afraid to ask for help? He had always prided himself on running a successful company, but now he wondered if that success had come at a cost. Determined to learn more, Ralph decided to get closer to Lily. During a lunch break, he casually approached her desk, holding a sandwich and a friendly smile. "Hey, Lily," he said, trying to sound nonchalant. "Mind if I join you?" She looked up, startled, but nodded. "Sure, Ryan. Have a seat." They ate in silence for a few minutes, the tension palpable. Ralph searched for the right words, not wanting to scare her off. "So," he began, "how long have you been with Future Tech?" "A few months," she replied, her tone guarded. "You've been doing great work. I've heard a lot of good things about you." She smiled faintly. "Thanks. I try." Ralph hesitated, then decided to take a risk. "You know, if you ever need anything, help with a project, or just someone to talk to, I'm here." Lily's eyes flickered with something. Gratitude? Suspicion? Before she nodded. "I appreciate that, Ryan. Really." The conversation stalled after that, but Ralph felt a small sense of progress. He had planted a seed, and now he just had to wait for it to grow. That evening, as he left the office, he saw Lily heading to her car again. This time, he didn't follow her. Instead, he stood in the shadows, watching as she climbed into the driver's seat and leaned back, her face illuminated by the glow of her phone. She looked so young, so vulnerable, and yet so strong. Ralph's resolve hardened. He couldn't fix everything overnight, but he could start by making sure Lily and Alice were safe. He pulled out his phone and sent a quick message to the head of security, instructing him to keep a discreet watch over the parking lot. As he drove home, his mind was a whirlwind of thoughts. He had set out to understand his employees, but he hadn't expected to uncover a story that would challenge everything he thought he knew about leadership and compassion. Lily's secret was more than just a personal struggle. It was a reflection of the systemic issues within his company. And as he lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, he knew one thing for certain: things were going to change. Starting with Lily. The days blurred together for Lily, each one a relentless cycle of work, childcare, and exhaustion. Her life had become a fragile balancing act, with no room for error. Between her demanding job at Future Tech and the constant weight of caring for Alice, she was running on fumes. When her mother became ill, she had nowhere else to leave Alice, and was getting by, still hiding the fact that she had been left by the baby's father. That was throwing her already precarious existence into chaos. The stress gnawed at her, manifesting in dark circles under her eyes, trembling hands, and a growing sense of hopelessness. Lily tried to keep her head down, focusing on her work as a way to drown out the noise of her personal struggles. But no matter how hard she worked, the cracks were beginning to show. She found herself snapping at colleagues over minor misunderstandings, forgetting deadlines that would have been second nature to her just months ago, and retreating further into herself. Kirsten noticed the change and often tried to check in, but Lily deflected her concerns with practiced ease. One afternoon, as she sat at her desk reviewing a project report, her phone buzzed with an email notification. She glanced at it absently, expecting another routine update from her team, but the subject line made her freeze. "Exciting opportunity awaits you at Infinite X." Her heart began to race as she opened the email. It was from a recruiter at Infinite X, Future Tech's biggest competitor. They had been following her work closely, impressed by her innovative ideas and dedication. The email outlined an enticing offer: a higher salary, better benefits, flexible hours, and, most importantly, on-site childcare and housing assistance. Lily's breath caught in her throat as she read the words again. This could be the solution to all her problems. With stable housing and reliable childcare, she could finally breathe. Alice would have a safe place to sleep, and Lily wouldn't have to live in constant fear of being discovered or evicted. For a moment, she allowed herself to imagine a life where she wasn't perpetually drowning. But then she saw the catch. The recruiter hinted that they were particularly interested in her unique insights into Future Tech's upcoming projects. They wanted her to bring something valuable to the table, something that could give Infinite X a competitive edge. She closed the email and leaned back in her chair, her mind racing. The thought of betraying Future Tech made her stomach churn. Despite her struggles, she had always believed in the company's mission. They had given her a chance when no one else would, hiring her shortly after Alice was born despite her lack of experience. She had worked tirelessly to prove herself, pouring every ounce of energy into her projects. To walk away now, to sell out the company that had trusted her, felt like a betrayal not just of Future Tech, but of herself. Yet the temptation lingered. How long could she keep living like this? How many more nights could she spend awake, worrying about whether Alice was warm enough in the car? How many more days could she endure the judgmental stares of strangers who didn't know her story? That evening, as she sat in her sedan with Alice asleep in the back seat, Lily wrestled with her decision. The parking lot was quiet, the only sound the soft hum of distant traffic. She stared at her phone, the recruiter's email still open. On one hand, the offer from Infinite X represented salvation, a way out of the endless cycle of struggle. On the other hand, it meant sacrificing everything she had built at Future Tech, including her integrity. Alice shifted in her car seat, letting out a small groan before drifting back to sleep. Lily reached back and gently stroked her daughter's cheek, her resolve wavering. She thought of Daniel, Alice's father, who she had been trying to reach lately, but to no avail. She thought of her mother, Elizabeth, whose health was failing and she didn't know when, or if, she would ever get well again. And she thought about Kirsten, the friend who offered to help her whenever she needed it. Leaving the company aside would also be failing her friend's trust. Could she really leave all of this behind? Could she abandon the people who had supported her, even if only in small ways? The idea of starting over at Infinite X was tempting, but it also felt hollow. What good was stability if it came at the cost of her principles? The next day at work, Lily was distracted. She found herself staring at her computer screen, unable to focus on the tasks in front of her. Kirsten noticed her unease and approached her during lunch. "Hey, you okay?" Kirsten asked, her voice filled with genuine concern. "You seem off." Lily forced a smile, with a head full of conflicting ideas, but still hiding his dilemmas. "Yeah, just tired." As the day wore on, Lily couldn't shake the feeling of guilt. She thought about her colleagues, the late-night brainstorming sessions, the shared victories, the trust they had placed in her. She even thought about Ryan, whose kindness had been a rare bright spot in her otherwise bleak existence. She didn't want to let them down. That evening, as she sat in her car with Alice once again, Lily made her decision. She opened the email from Infinite X and began typing her response. "Dear recruiter, thank you for considering me for this opportunity. While I appreciate the offer and the recognition of my work, I must decline. I am deeply committed to my role at FutureTech and cannot compromise my integrity by sharing confidential information. I hope you understand. Sincerely, Lily Carlton." As she hit send, a wave of relief washed over her. It wasn't an easy decision, but it was the right one. She had chosen loyalty over personal gain, even in the face of immense hardship. It was a decision rooted in her values, one she hoped would lead to something better, even if she couldn't see it yet. Unbeknownst to Lily, Ralph had been watching her closely throughout the day. He had noticed her distraction, the way her hands trembled as she typed, the haunted look in her eyes. Something was weighing heavily on her, and he couldn't help but feel responsible. He had started this undercover mission to understand his employees, but now he realized he had underestimated the depth of their struggles. Later that evening, as he drove home, Ralph replayed the events of the day in his mind. He thought about Lily's determination, her quiet strength, and the sacrifices she was making. He thought about the baby in the parking lot, the symbol of everything he had overlooked as CEO. And he knew without a doubt that things had to change. But how could he step in without revealing his true identity? How could he help Lily without jeopardizing his mission? These questions swirled in his mind as he pulled into his driveway, the weight of leadership pressing down on him like never before. The morning light filtered through the floor-to-ceiling windows of FutureTech's headquarters, casting long shadows across the polished floors. Ralph arrived earlier than usual, his mind heavy with thoughts of Lily and Alice. He had spent the night wrestling with guilt and responsibility, replaying the image of Lily cradling her baby in the dim glow of her car. The vision haunted him. He was the CEO who failed to notice the cracks in his company's foundation. He walked through the corridors, nodding at familiar faces while trying to suppress the growing unease in his chest. When he reached the marketing department, he spotted Lily at her desk, hunched over her computer. Her shoulders were stiff, her fingers flying across the keyboard as if attempting to outrun her exhaustion. She looked more fragile than ever, yet there was an undeniable resilience in the way she carried herself. Ralph admired her strength, but it only deepened his resolve to act. He couldn't keep pretending to be someone else while Lily fought battles invisible to most. But how could he step in without breaking his disguise? If he revealed himself now, would Lily see it as betrayal? Would she trust him enough to accept help? These questions swirled in his mind as he approached her desk. "Hey, Lily," he said softly, placing a cup of coffee beside her monitor. "Got a minute?" She glanced up, startled, then offered a tired smile. "Sure, Ryan. What's up?" Ralph hesitated, searching for the right words. "I've noticed you've been distracted lately. Is everything okay?" Lily sighed, setting her pen down. For a moment, she looked like she might open up, but then her walls went back up. "It's nothing I can't handle." Her tone was polite but distant, a reminder that she still didn't fully trust him, or anyone else, for that matter. Ralph nodded, masking his frustration. He wanted to tell her everything and promise her that things would get better, but he knew he couldn't do it here, like this. Instead, he made a mental note to accelerate his plan. Later that afternoon, Ralph found himself sitting near Lily and Kirsten during lunch. They were talking in hushed tones, their conversation laced with tension. He pretended to focus on his sandwich, but his ears strained to catch every word. "Have you decided what you're going to do?" Kirsten asked, her voice tinged with concern. Lily hesitated before responding. "I turned down the offer from Infinite X. I couldn't betray Future Tech, even if it means continuing to struggle." Ralph nearly choked on his food. His eyes widened as he processed her words. So, she had been tempted by a competitor, a company willing to exploit her talent and knowledge for their gain. But despite the temptation, despite the immense pressure she was under, she had chosen loyalty. It was a decision that spoke volumes about her character. He leaned forward, his voice steady but urgent. "Lily, we need to talk." She looked at him, surprised. "About what?" "Not here," he said, standing up. "Follow me." Kirsten raised an eyebrow, clearly curious, but said nothing as Lily rose from her seat and followed Ralph to a nearby conference room. Once inside, Ralph closed the door behind them and turned to face her. His heart pounded as he prepared to drop the biggest bombshell of his life. "Lily," he began, his voice firm but gentle, "I'm not who you think I am. My name isn't Ryan Malloy. I'm Ralph Wellington, the CEO of Future Tech." For a moment, silence filled the room. Lily stared at him, her expression shifting from confusion to disbelief, and finally, to anger. "What?" she demanded, her voice rising. "You've been lying to us this whole time? Spying on us?" "It wasn't about spying," Ralph replied quickly, holding up his hands in defense. "I wanted to understand what was really happening in this company, the struggles my employees face every day. And let me tell you, what I've seen has changed me." Lily crossed her arms, her gaze sharp. "So, all of this, your kindness, your curiosity, it was just part of your little experiment?" "No," Ralph insisted, his voice softening. "That's the thing, Lily. Yes, I started this to learn more about the company, but along the way I got to know you. I saw how hard you work, how much you sacrifice, and how fiercely loyal you are. You turned down a lucrative offer because you believe in Future Tech, even when it hasn't done enough for you." Her anger faltered slightly, replaced by uncertainty. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because I can't stand by and watch you suffer anymore," Ralph admitted, his voice thick with emotion. "You deserve better. You all do." Before she could respond, Ralph picked up the phone and dialed an extension. "Schedule an emergency meeting with all department heads. Now." Within minutes, the conference room was packed with senior executives, their expressions ranging from curiosity to irritation. Ralph stood at the head of the table, his presence commanding attention. He took a deep breath before speaking. "Today, I want to talk about integrity, loyalty, and compassion," he began, his voice steady and clear. "We pride ourselves on being a forward-thinking company, but I've realized that our success isn't just measured by profits or innovation. It's measured by how we treat our people." He paused, looking directly at Lily, who sat quietly in the corner. "Take Lily Carlton, for example. She's one of the hardest-working employees we have. She delivers exceptional results, often going above and beyond what's expected of her. And yet, she's been struggling in ways none of us could imagine." Lily shifted uncomfortably in her seat, avoiding eye contact as murmurs rippled through the room. "She recently received an offer from Infinite X, a tempting opportunity that included benefits we don't currently provide. Do you know what she did? She turned it down. Not because she doesn't need the help, but because she believes in this company and its mission. That kind of loyalty is rare, and it deserves recognition." The room fell silent as Ralph continued. "Effective immediately, Lily will be promoted to Special Projects Manager, with a salary increase and comprehensive benefits that include housing assistance and on-site childcare. Additionally, I'm implementing an employee support program designed to address the challenges many of you may be facing. This includes financial aid, mental health resources, and flexible work arrangements." Different company executives looked at each other in surprise at the decision, while Lily was still trying to process what had just happened. Ralph approached her, kneeling down slightly to meet her gaze. "You don't have to say anything," he said softly. "You've already proven your worth. Now it's our turn to give back." In the weeks that followed, the changes at FutureTech began to take shape. Lily moved into a safe apartment provided through the new Housing Assistance Program, and Alice thrived in the on-site daycare center. With the weight of her struggles lifted, Lily poured her energy into her new role, spearheading projects that brought significant improvements to the company. Her dedication inspired others, creating a ripple effect of positivity throughout the organization. For Ralph, the experience was transformative. He realized that leadership wasn't just about making decisions from the top. It was about listening, understanding, and taking action. By stepping out of his comfort zone and seeing the world through his employees' eyes, he had uncovered both the flaws and the potential within FutureTech. As he stood on the balcony overlooking the bustling office, Ralph felt a sense of pride, not just in the company's achievements, but in the people who made it all possible. Thanks to Lily, he had learned that true success lies not in numbers, but in the lives touched along the way. Ralph believed that FutureTech was truly living up to its name. Lily chose integrity over personal gain, but how far should companies go to support their employees? Do you think Ralph did enough to fix the cracks in his company? Share your thoughts below. If you enjoyed the story, subscribe to embrace the journey. See you in the next video.